So in the mail today, I got my Geissele Super Dynamic 3-gun trigger. The package actually comes with some type of, I don't know if this is a bag or if it's a handkerchief or anything like that, but I'll open that up later. That's not what I'm after. Actually, after this, which is the Super Dynamic 3-gun trigger. Directions are right here. This is the one with the straight bow. That's what I wanted. This one is supposed to be very receptive to your trigger finger. It's a cross between a 2-stage trigger and a single-stage trigger. So once I get it in, I'll also show you the operation of it as well, and we're going to check the poundage at which it pulls. So what we have here in the package, you have a little bit of grease, you have the actual trigger with the disconnect in it, and notice there is a pin in here. That's the trigger pin, or the pin that will hold the trigger and the disconnect in the lower receiver. This is the slave pin that will temporarily replace the trigger pin during installation. Then right here is the hammer. There's a spring already on here. And what they do is they send 2 springs. One is a lighter spring and the other one is a heavier spring. The hammer pin is already in there, so all you have to do is punch it out. So I always start with the directions. I've installed 3 Geissele triggers. In my opinion, it's the best trigger. I've shot a bunch of different, I shouldn't say a bunch, probably 5 different what you'd consider high-end triggers, and I'm not going to name them just out of respect for the companies. I think they're all pretty good. I think Geissele is the best. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be installing this on a new build, so I don't have to take out the old trigger, or the old trigger and hammer, I should say. So here's the directions right here, and you'll see these when you get it. But it obviously goes over first, make sure your weapon is unloaded, and the rules for gun safety. And then the installation instructions, again, unload the rifle, make safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video for a second. Here's my lower receiver. I'm going to go ahead and remove the safety so I can install this. So back to the directions, the first thing that it says to do is to remove the trigger pin from the trigger and replace it with the slave pin to hold the disconnector in place. So here's the trigger pin right here. So it says to remove the trigger pin and replace it with the slave pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this trigger pin partially pulled out, and I'm going to start the slave pin. And I'm just going to kind of knock the trigger pin out. That's the easiest way, because that way everything stays lined up. So then I'm going to go ahead and set the trigger pin aside. And I just want to make sure, and you can pretty much do this by hand, press the slave pin so that it's even on both sides. So you'll see this. It doesn't stick out. And that way you can get it into the receiver. So then the next step, it says install the trigger and the slave pin into the rifle. Align the slave pin with the receiver pinholes. Insert the trigger pin into the receiver through the trigger disconnector and into the receiver on the opposite side. If you notice, there are 2 springs that come with the trigger. This one right here, and they look identical, so you're not gonna misplace them for any other spring. This black one is the lighter spring. The gold one comes on the trigger, and this will give you a 4.5 pound trigger pull. If you want a lighter pull, you can replace it with the black trigger spring. This will give you, according to Geissele, and we're going to check this out, a 3.5 pound pull weight. So I'm going to stick the black on there, and I'm going to go with that. So just put it on the same way. So this just lifts off fairly easily. Go ahead and set that aside. And then you put this on. One thing to notice when you do put this on, this hook goes underneath here. And if you have any questions, Geissele provides a picture of it, so you can't go wrong. Again, this is the black spring, and it's supposed to be 3.5 pounds. So my next step here is I'm going to go ahead and put in the trigger. And what I like to do is I like to make sure that the spring is actually pushing against there. And then I go ahead and line up the hole. And this may take a second, but you can basically, what you see is you see the pins. And you can use your thumb or anything that you can that helps you. Like right now, I have a really good hold on that. I can see it perfect. So I push this in here, and I can actually push it all the way in by hand. I don't have to use anything to tap it with. And here's my slave pin. So what you see here then, you see the trigger working. That's exactly what it should be doing. I'll show you a side view of that. Again, there's no hammer in there yet. Here's the side view of the trigger working. That's exactly what you want to see. So the next step is to remove the hammer pin. And it just doesn't push out. Or maybe I'm not strong enough. So I'm just going to go ahead, see if I can just kind of tap this to get it going. And I can. Then it should be pretty simple, and it is. So what it says to do, it says to take a drop of oil. I'm going to set the hammer pin up here so I don't knock it off the bench. And just put it in the bore. Kind of get to spread around there, just like that. Okay, next what I'm going to do is install the hammer. And one thing that's very important, the springs go right on here, right on top of the pin for the trigger. And what that does is it helps to retain that. So I hope you can see this pretty well. Got as much light as I can. Let me see if I can point one more time. Right over here. And right over here is where the springs sit on top. The spring right here. So right here is the hammer. This is the part that hits the firing pin. So it always has to go this way. And one thing when you're installing this, make sure that this spring catches right underneath here. And then this is a little bit difficult to install because there's a lot of spring tension when you go and put it in here, and then you kind of got to pull it back and you got to bring it forward so you can go ahead and get the pin in. Just take your time. It's not that hard to do, but you have to do it right. And if you have any questions how this goes on here, it's in that illustration in the directions. So right here, in the directions, you can see where it hooks on the hammer right underneath here. That way you can't get it wrong. Okay, I'm about to install the hammer. So remember, these springs right here, they lay on top of the trigger pin just like that. And this can be a little bit hard getting it in there because the hammer spring is under a lot of tension. So you got to get in there and just try and line it up. And then you can put in the hammer spring. And if you notice, I'm wearing gloves because I can get a little bit more grip with these rubber gloves. You don't always have to tap that in, but with this tension on the spring, it's just pretty hard. So what I do is, let me see if I can just kind of pull the camera over here for a second. Actually, I got it screwed down, so I'm gonna have to take this out really quick. See how the pin is just sticking out just a little bit? So what I do to get that pin in, I look through the hole on the other side, make sure it's lined up, and I just slightly wiggle it in. Actually, I had to give it a little bit of a tap, but it's in there.
The next part is applying lube. One thing I forgot to show earlier in this video is applying lube to the bore of the trigger, disconnector, and the hammer. So I had to pull each of them out, removing the pins, put the lube in, and then reassemble each. I did that and then I resumed the video.
So what I use to apply lube is I use the end of a Q-tip and I just apply a little bit on there. You can kind of put it right underneath there. And everybody has their desired or favorite grease. I'm just using today the stuff that Geissele sent with the trigger. Both sides right here on the hammer where it comes in contact with the disconnector.
In case it was hard to see where I was applying oil or lube, Geissele shows the lube points in its directions. Inside the bore of the trigger and hammer where the pins pass through gets lubed. There's 2 points on the hammer that get lubed. There's 1 point on the disconnector and 1 point on the trigger that also get lubed.
You can see how that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera off for a minute. I'm going to put the pistol grip back on, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so let's test this and see where it's pulling. Okay, right where you see the trigger first start to move and it hasn't broke, it's right at 2 pounds. Right at 2 pounds. Just give it a little bit more pull, and it broke. Right at 2 1/4 pounds. Let's go ahead and check that again for consistency. So I'm trying to come close to the edge of the trigger. Right there again, I pull a little bit faster there, 2 1/4. Let's go one more time. So right there's 2. Back off a little bit. Pulled it a little bit too fast, went just at 2 2 pounds there. Try this one more time because I'm trying to get that trigger just to move again like I did the first time. So right there the trigger started moving right past 2. It's almost to 2 1/4. I'm just pulling ever so slightly right at 2 1/4, and that's right after I said that. You can see right where it broke. Okay, one other thing I like to do also, charge the weapon, go ahead and put it on safe. Make sure everything works with your safety. So it will not pull, it's on safe. Put it on fire. And see, I can control that little bit of movement. But there I went ahead and pulled through it. So it's going to take a little bit of getting used to it. And again, the travel distance on this is barely anything. Just a little bit there. And then it breaks. Okay, watch the reset. Here we go. So overall, this is the lightest trigger that I've ever had in an AR. So I'm going to have to get used to it. But for 3-gun, with that quick reset and just light trigger, I'm going to be able to get onto my next target and next target after that and next target after that just super quick. And that's what I'm looking forward to. This is not a gun that I would use if the shit hit the fan. This is a gun that I would use for 3-gun.
Thank you for watching. Please like my video and follow my channel for future videos.